Thank you, Evelyn. Good morning, everyone. How is everybody today? Yay. Thank you, everyone, for coming. For those of you who don't know us, my name is Nayaswami Gangamata. This is Nayaswami Daiva. It's truly our joy to be here with all of you today. I'm going to begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. This is Yogananda's book of prayer demands and poems. And this is a poem called God's Boatman. I want to ply my boat many times across the gulf after death and return to earth's shores from my home in space. I want to load my boat with all those waiting, thirsty ones who have been left behind, that I may carry them to the opalescent pool of iridescent joy, there where my Father distributes his all desire-quenching liquid peace. Oh, I will come back again and again, crossing a million crags of suffering. With bleeding feet, I will come, if need be 1,000,000,000,000 times, as long as I know that one stray brother is left behind. I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show others how they too can free themselves. I want thine everlasting happiness, but I want also to share it with others, that all my brothers may find the way to happiness forever and forever in thee. Om. Peace. Amen. This poem so beautifully highlights the importance that God and Guru put on us coming back to them. That creation was designed in such a way that God will not force us to come to him, but God will invite us. We are celebrating yesterday and today the anniversary of the discipleship of Swami Kriyananda. 67 years ago, he said to Yogananda, I want to be your disciple. And this topic so perfectly fits in with the celebration of his life, because this is exactly what Swami did. He never forced, but he also invited. Many years ago when he was alive, he passed away a little bit over 2 years ago, but when he lived at Ananda Village, it came to his attention that not many people were coming to Sunday service. And so instead of, when it was brought to his attention, instead of making a rule that if you live at Ananda Village, you have to come to Sunday service, he said, you know what? I'll start doing service. This way I can help magnetize it. And you can imagine then what happened. People started coming again. But this is the way of the saints. This is the way of the masters. They invite us from above, right? They never push from below. This is the basis of the spiritual path. Anytime we practice the physical aspect of yoga, hatha yoga, we always talk about lifting the energy, never pushing ourselves into a pose, but aspiring higher, turning our gaze upward. When we practice Hong Sa, our meditation practice of concentration, we're always lifting the energy up, gently to the point between the eyebrows. Again, never pushing, never forcing. This is the way of Kriya Yoga, energizing the spine so we can lift the energy up through the higher chakras to higher aspirations. So what? So we can have a deeper experience of God in our lives, in our meditations. But this invitation then comes only to a certain point, and we have to decide. The great saint Anandamoy Ma said we have one choice, and that is to think of God or to not think of God. And what are we going to do when we get that invitation? And when we get that invitation, are we going to accept it with all our heart, all our mind, all our soul, and with all our strength? Is that how we're going to accept the invitation to join the path? Or are we going to let the things of the world stop us from saying yes, whatever they are? Whether our family, our work, our job, our lack of money or health, or whatever the reason is. But are we going to say yes? And Swami Kriyananda created a monastic order for householders. It used to be that only the renunciates can go and say yes to having a God-filled life, that they could go up to the Himalayas. But Swami Kriyananda said, no, everybody can find God, no matter what our circumstances. So at Ananda, we have people that have children, that don't have children, that are married, that are not married, that have houses, don't have houses, have jobs, don't have jobs, whatever it is. We can still find God. But when we say yes to that invitation, again, the reminder, the masters come and say yes to life. Gyanamata says, say yes to life and make it snappy. How are we going to say yes to life? How? We all know that story of the young man that went to the great saint Ramakrishna, I believe, and he said, I want to see God. And Ramakrishna said, okay, let's first go down to the Ganges and take a bath. And so when they get to the Ganges, it's a river, sacred old river in India. The young man gets into the river and Ramakrishna just pushes him down and he keeps him underwater for a little bit of time till he can no longer be underwater. And then when he comes up, he's just gasping. And Ramakrishna says, well, what were you thinking of when you were underwater? Were you thinking of your spouse? I hope he was. No. Were you thinking of your spouse? Were you thinking of your children, your family? Were you thinking of your job, your house, your possessions? And the man says, no, I was thinking of none of those things. What were you thinking of? And the man said, I was thinking of when was I going to get that next breath of air? And Ramakrishna said, that's when you will see God. That's when you will see God, when that desire is so great. But then we're reminded in the Gita, right? Because we're like, how can I know that I can love God that much? I love these worldly things. They're just right there. But the Gita reminds us, even a fruit, a leaf or a flower, offered in my name, the tiniest of gesture, offered in my name, will be accepted with great joy from the masters, with great joy. They're inviting us to step towards the light. They're inviting us to those higher aspirations. Sure, we may not be there right now, but that's why they brought all those tools of self-realization. We always talk about the capital S for self-realization. They brought us those tools so we can build on that aspiration. We were talking in our class the other night in Kriya Prep and review about devotion and how important devotion is. It's a tool along with all those other tools. Even if we just develop our devotion, what will happen? We'll get that much closer to God. That's the invitation, not to make us feel bad, but to encourage us also. We have to take that step. That's how the path is designed. We have the Guru's grace, we have God's grace, but we have to make our effort. Let's accept the invitation, remembering Yogananda's promise. He's going to wait till just one brother is left behind. They won't leave us behind. They will come, but we have to make the effort. Let's accept the invitation, and then with divine wisdom, clarity, joy, peace. So God bless you all. Daiva will also share.
Thank you. The masters say that every moment not spent seeking God is time wasted. And it's a fairly compelling thought that every moment matters. And it's a funny balance. It's a funny place to walk because there's a part of us that really resists coercion, and we should. It resists kind of the sense that that life is that immediate and that intense, and we need to really stay focused and everything. But what they tell us also is that everything we seek, every single thing we're seeking in our hearts, in our aspirations, comes through our divine contact, through our awakening. I had an interesting experience a few years back that really put a point on it. I'll tell it in a second. One of the bookmarks is that until I came to Ananda, until I came to the spiritual path earnestly, I guess that's my marker. When I came to Ananda, I was ready to really give my life to trying to find the source of meaning. And I don't care what language you put it in, that's found in the stillness of meditation, and it is the connection with the universal spirit. But until that time, my life was basically a series of events that just had no particular point to them. They were all very interesting, but they just kept landing in the same place, which was I continued to come back to that experience of, this is it? Really, this is it? Once I came to Ananda, what I found was that life became infinitely more interesting, infinitely more challenging, but challenging in a way that it led to further understanding and wisdom and growth and a relationship, an increasing relationship to the very heart of life itself. And in the course of time, Divine Mother does show up. If we're sincere, God will appear to us. God will talk with us. God will commune and lift us up into realms that are far beyond anything that this planet and this world and the senses can engender and encompass. But we are very complex. And often we can have those really sublime spiritual experiences and then discover that other parts of us are lagging behind. And I was in the middle of, to get back to the story, I was in the middle of working, and many of you have heard parts of this story, but I was working very hard, diligently. I was offering my life in service to God. What God put in front of me was construction and carpentry, and we were in the middle of one of the more sensational projects that I've run across in this lifetime. Everything was perfect about it, right? It was gorgeous setting. It was 100 and some odd acres on a several 100-foot cliff over the Yuba River. It was off the grid, so we were building solar. It was a natural building. It was light straw clay. I'd been involved in the design of it. I'd been involved in I'd been trained in the construction technique. I had a bunch of really young people working with me who were all learning how to build. Just everything about it was fabulous. And it was intense. It was really, really intense. And at the end of a really, really intense week, and amongst intense weeks, I went out and picked up a rattlesnake and got bit. And it's amazing how quickly life changes. And from that moment on, really not a single thing in my life mattered. Except, of course, my wife. How'd I do? Okay. Nothing mattered. And we got, I was going to just go home and sleep it off, and I got told that was a silly thing to do, and I should probably get to the emergency room. So I went to the emergency room, which was about an hour away. I was kind of glad I did. But, but I was lying on the gurney. And they had run out, it was a big year for rattlesnakes, they had run out of antivenom. And so they had nothing to give me, and they didn't have a room to put me in, so I'm just lying on the gurney, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. This kind of, and for those who haven't had the delightful experience of this, it's one of the more intense drugs I've ever done, or drug cocktails. It's like sticking your finger into an electric socket, and then having somebody just keep turning up the rheostat. It's a fairly vivid experience. But I'm lying there, I had chosen not to push this away, to just embrace whatever came. And as I'm lying there, the guy in the doctor's outfit with the stethoscope around the neck and everything, we saw him for just this moment, never saw him again. But he came over, he lifted up my hand, he says, you could lose your finger, you could lose your hand, you could lose your life. Dropped the hand and disappeared, just walked off, that was it. So, okay, door 1, 2, or 3. And I realized there was no choice in it. This was not like, I got to select. It was just one of these doors I was probably going to go through one of these doors. And I realized it really didn't matter. It really didn't matter. Because what had happened was I had stepped into spirit. I had stepped into embracing what God brought. And in conjunction, and this is where, again, Ananda and prayer and Sangha matter, because people were praying for me, so it was reinforcing that presence of spirit. And all I felt was joy. All I felt was love and wholeness. It really didn't matter whether I had a body or not. It had nothing to do with happiness. It had nothing to do with what I was seeking. And I realized that's what the masters are telling us. Until we're in that state perpetually, we're bound. then we think, well, if I can just get back to the job and finish it, then I'll be happy. If I can just, get the right whatever it is, or make this go away, or just adjust the surface things, I'll be happy. But the happiness is always just right there. And the invitation is for us not to wait for rattlesnakes and peak moments, but to step into it every single moment. It turned out that of the 3 choices, I got the least of them. I lost the finger and not the hand and not the life and not other things. But again, this is a souvenir of an experience that's just vivid beyond imagining. And it informs my daily life. And I would encourage all of us, it's not the first time God came to me. These teachings, the power of these teachings is that if you really do them, you get a divine response. But not all of us wants to tag along and really go into it. So parts of us get a little bit resistant and push away, and we get back into amnesia a little bit. But the farther we go, step by step, the more access we have. And gradually what happens is the rest of us starts to open toward being bathed in the divine. It really is. It's the only time you'll ever feel whole. It's the only time you ever feel like you always wanted to feel. It's the only time. But the ego is a real force. It's a real thing, and it asserts itself and pulls the blanket of Maya down across the eyes and helps us kind of get caught back in. The process of wisdom, the invitation of the divine, it's not to withdraw from this world. It's not to become less or smaller. It's not to become an imitation copy of ourselves. The invitation and wisdom would dictate that we go into the very heart of life, into the very source of all power, the very source of all creativity, the very source of all joy and wholeness, and fill up. And then stand up. Put down our Kriya beads, fold our blanket, stretch our muscles, stand up, and see what needs to be done. See what God puts in front of us. And then let that joy and energy and power and wisdom pour through us into every single thing that's there. It takes great courage. And if you're really sincere, what will be put in front of you will be far beyond anything you ever imagined. Because that's how we grow. That's how we discover that there are less limitations than we thought of before. I love Facebook, I must admit, because I like being amazified. And what it does, I think we all create our own little community, our own little world on Facebook. I know you can get into real political stuff, you can probably get into really dark stuff. But the things that tend to come, the people who I've chosen as friends and the things that they tend to post, tend to be things that really celebrate the connection of the human spirit with the divine. And you see, years ago when I was growing up, we're in this wonderful transition between an age of form and structure and limitation into an age of energy and freedom. And you see people doing all kinds of things that are absolutely impossible from a limited standpoint. You see people hugging lions and hanging out with cheetahs. You see people doing, is it parkour? What is it? When you're, that freedom of movement where there's just virtually no limitation. You see people saving whales. You see people connecting with each other and creating waves of new consciousness. You see tens of thousands of people doing yoga on the streets of New York. You see people coming together to celebrate a new vision of life, to recreate something of meaning in the midst of the chaos and turmoil and tragedy that's storming this planet. And it's simply a matter of choice. They're choosing to draw on the power of spirit through their own connection and express it. Allow it to express through them. That's wisdom. That's the invitation. And that's what Ananda's a part of. I'll tell you, the more you do it, the more you explore what you can do in it, what Divine Mother or the power of the divine would do through you, the more interesting your life will become. The more we do it together, the more we create new community, the more Ananda Laurelwood gets fed as a place of possibility for an alternative way of living, the more we can stand there every day and just feel that power coming to life through us. In a little while, we're all going to go like this. And we're going to get told, you may lose your finger, your hand, your life. You're going to get told, time's up. Your time playing here. There's a great story of a very simple saint. He may have been Jewish, but I can't remember. Anyway, somebody said to him, why don't you have many things? Why don't you own many things? I mean, there's so much in this world, and, you could have a lot more comforts around you. And he says, when you go on vacation, do you take all kinds of stuff? He says, no, I pack pretty light. He says, I'm just on vacation. I'm just visiting here. This is not my home. We get caught. We start to think that this is our home. This is not our home. We're just here for a little while. We're just visiting. Then we get to go home where all our stuff is. Our house of light and all the connections and friendships and stuff that are so much more profound and lasting. And we'll run into each other there as well. But we'll run into each other in ways that are far more true than what we're able to express and experience here on this planet. It's the invitation. If we do it now, we can live in these moments connected to the source of life. We don't have to wait. We can fill up with God. And that's the highest wisdom. Let's take a moment and just feel right here, right now, for that presence of Spirit, for all the blessings of Spirit in your life, the friendships you share that uplift you, the beautiful environment of Portland, the remarkable, nourishing foods, the fresh air, the sunshine, the wind, the mists that nourish growth and life, the consciousness that's here, and feel how if we just ride that, it'll just slowly degrade. But if we nourish it with our attunement, our attention, our love, our connection with the source, it'll just get more and more beautiful. And we'll leave behind us something worth having done and memorable.